I'm Al Ward, a sales engineer from the RED London office. I should say I always add the caveat to that I don't do sales. I'm not a qualified engineer, so the equivalent job title in the UK is product specialist. And I'm joined by Dan today to add a level of credibility to the proceedings.
Yeah, I'm the head of post-production over here at Red Digital Cinema. So I'll be just running the PowerPoint in the background. Al's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting here, but I'll be showing off some more cool new features that we added to the Raptor X and how they can benefit in a lot of different shooting styles. So speaking of, we'll start with the journey to the Raptor X.
Yeah, so just a quick session overview for what we'll cover today. We're going to go through a quick how did we get to X, so a little very brief history of the journey the Red's been on to get there. We'll look at the product itself, both in the V-RAPTOR X and V-RAPTOR XL iteration. And then we're going to look at some of the new features we've introduced through global vision, so extended highlight protection, and as well as phantom track dual capture. So we'll go into what those terms mean. And then we'll look at some of the unique versatility that RED products offer, so some of the additional features. So what else can the camera do for you beyond the actual image capture? Okay, so journey to X. So I suppose technically the journey started with the launch of the RED 1, but we probably don't have time to go through the full history of RED here. So we'll start at Komodo, and then its older brother, the Komodo-X, or younger brother, I should say. So Komodo represented the first instance since the RED 1 where the infrastructure of the product was built from the ground up. So previous generations had been building on the work done by RED 1, DSMC, DSMC2. Komodo, they stripped everything back and they started from scratch. So it does represent the kind of first step towards the V-RAPTOR X where we are today. So what was key with a lot of digital sensors, what's key with the Komodo is it utilizes a global shutter instead of rolling. So hopefully everyone's familiar with the terms rolling shutter, global shutter, but just in case, most digital sensors utilize a rolling shutter, which is where the sensor is scanned from the top to the bottom. Obviously, this can lead to some unwanted image artifacts. So for things like very fast flash bulbs or spinning blades, you might see these sort of artifacts. Whereas a global shutter, every photo site is exposed simultaneously. It's either on or off, and obviously that eradicates those unwanted image artifacts. So that was one of the things that was very unique about Komodo. It was the first RED camera that utilized a global shutter.
And one thing you'll notice on the right, which you see all the time, is flash frames, right? I'm sure you see a lot of commercials or videos where there is a half or a quarter of a flash bulb or something really quick in the frame. So that's one huge benefit that you just see right out of the box, where you don't have to do anything in particular. You're just going to get that entire flash, the entire strobe at the exact same time every time when you capture with a global shutter. So it's the one on the right, the little flash. So good example.
So part of the reason that we pushed for global shutter in the Komodo is that the initial brief from a lot of film studios, so people like Marvel, Netflix, was that they wanted a cinema camera that they could use as a crash camera. So a kind of smaller body action camera. So obviously that's where the global shutter became quite important. So these are some of the examples of films that Komodo's been used on, obviously quite action-orientated at the Hollywood end, as they are using it as a crash camera. However, the side effect of making a crash camera is obviously it has to be very affordable if you're going to be putting it in situations where it might get blown up, hit by things. The price point can't be too high. As a result of that, a lot of people bought the Komodo to use as their A-cam. So solo camera operators, run and gun style shooting, or we've even seen fully rigged up Komodos out there. So it's quickly become RED's most popular camera. So from that moment, the team in engineering started kind of focusing on some of the features that they could use to take the Komodo from the kind of more crash camera orientated body to that of more of an A camera, B camera. So that was when the Komodo-X was launched. So the Komodo-X was launched last year, built on a lot of the foundations that Komodo had initially laid down. So still shared the same 6K Super 35 global shutter, although it was a new sensor, so it had improvements in low light, general image performance. You will see improvements over Komodo. And another big thing with Komodo-X was that all the frame rates were doubled from Komodo. So if people familiar with Komodo, that capped out at 6K 40. Now Komodo-X will go up to 6K 80 frames per second. And a few other additional benefits. It now shares the same media as Raptor, so CF Express Type B, so a lot faster to handle those higher data rates. And then in general, it features a more ergonomic design. So again, Komodo, the focus was making it as small as possible to suit that crash camera specification, whereas Komodo-X can the I/O is a little bit more ergonomic. It's had improvements in audio. Again, audio not being top of the priorities for a crash camera. Komodo-X features much improved preamps, micro V-lock, higher voltage. You can run accessories like the 7-inch LCD, that sort of thing. So designed to bring the Komodo into those kind of A-camera environments. Anything you want to add on that, Dan? Or good?
No, that's a very good description why we got to the Komodo-X from the Komodo. But like Al said, one of the biggest things were we listened to feedback of our customers. So a lot of people who own the Komodo said, I wish it was slightly faster in frame rates. I wish the media was a little bit more robust. I can transfer faster and record more to it. I wish, and then we tried to fulfill as many as we could, and that's how we got to the Komodo-X.
And then obviously at the high end, we had the V-RAPTOR and V-RAPTOR XL. So to give you some of its credentials, these are some of the productions that Raptor have been used on over the last couple of years. I believe V-RAPTOR launched in November 2 years ago.
October, November.
So it's been on the market now for a couple of years. So these are some of the credentials. Obviously, a lot of familiar names if you're familiar with RED as a brand. So David Fincher, Soderbergh, James Gunn, Zack Snyder, kind of regular RED users. So as of 2 weeks ago, this was the current product lineup. So again, a very common question that we've had, I think, basically since Komodo and Raptor are available, is can we get a global shutter in the Raptor? Can we take advantage of the kind of higher specs of V-RAPTOR while still maintaining that global shutter? So as of last 2 weeks ago, that is now possible. So the V-RAPTOR X launched with the global shutter while still maintaining all the specifications of the V-RAPTOR rolling shutter camera. I should say at this point, before we move on, this does not represent a discontinuation of V-RAPTOR rolling shutter. They are still going to share the same firmware path. So there will be some features that are only available in V-RAPTOR X due to the higher processing power. There are upgrades available from V-RAPTOR to V-RAPTOR X. However, that doesn't mean that V-RAPTOR is being left behind. So if there are people in the audience who have a V-RAPTOR who maybe aren't looking to upgrade, then you're not going to be left behind in terms of firmware upgrades and product support. Taking global shutter and applying it to the V-RAPTOR, we kind of talk about that like it's straightforward. Obviously, there's a huge amount of work has gone into that from the engineering end.
Yeah, no, the engineers knocked out of the park being able to do a global shutter, VV size, large format sensor itself. So I applaud them because they spent a lot of hours making sure we can get it into that sensor without having any limitations. So the big thing is that sensor on Raptor is now global shutter, and you're not limited in dynamic range or noise floor or frame rates or anything. We're able to pack it in there and make it all work, which is an amazing accomplishment from our engineering team.
Okay, so to kick things off, obviously that sensor, as with the previous iteration of Raptor, is available in either the V-RAPTOR X or V-RAPTOR XLX camera body. So this is a technical decision. So whilst the sensor is the creative decision, choosing between these bodies is based on your needs on set. So whether you need the smaller, more versatile modular V-RAPTOR X, or if you need the kind of fully spec'd out studio V-RAPTOR XL with its higher power, more image outputs, whether you're running loads of accessories on the body, that sort of thing. So the XL will probably live more on sticks, dollies, whereas the Raptor, you can go handheld, gimbal, drones, etc. So both of them have exactly the same sensor, same frame rate, same image performance, same data rates. So they work really nicely as an A/B solution. So in terms of the sensor itself, just before we move on to the specifications, there has been an upgrade to the actual sensor cavity on Raptor. So there will now be improved contrast performance, less internal reflections than what you might have seen on the rolling shutter V-RAPTOR. Anything else in regards to the actual mitigation there?
No, you hit the main things. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, you should see improved, again, image performance based on the changes to the sensor cavity. And then in terms of the specifications, this will match V-RAPTOR. Again, the key difference here being global shutter. So multi-format, so 8K VV, or if you drop down to 6K, that will give you Super 35 coverage. Drop down to 3K, that will give you Super 16 coverage, so you can use a variety of lenses on this product. Pixel pitch, 5 microns, helps reach that 17 stops of dynamic range. We offer anamorphic modes in 8K, 7K, and 6K. Again, that's not hidden behind any license fees. Everything is enabled upon purchase. Max frame rates at 120 frames per second, and with all Komodo, Komodo-X, and V-RAPTOR, the sensor also has integrated phase detection autofocus. Another thing that seems quite straightforward, but hitting this sort of dynamic range with a global shutter sensor is very, very impressive. So maintaining the dynamic range that people love from the original V-RAPTOR and bringing that into the V-RAPTOR X. And then this is a nice look at kind of the noise characteristics of the V-RAPTOR sensor. So this is actually comparing it back to a legacy sensor from RED, so previous generation. But we've been able to kind of hit a really nice level of noise characteristics on the V-RAPTOR. So you can probably, hopefully you can tell, but the lower half of this image is a legacy sensor from RED. So features a lot more fixed pattern noise, which tends to be less ideal. Whereas the top is more randomized noise, so much more similar to kind of film grain. Yeah. So people tend to talk about noise as a dirty word, whereas grain suddenly is more subjective. So it tends to be a lot more pleasing on the eye.
I'm going to see if I can zoom in a little on my computer. Let's see. Nope, this way. Just take a look at this. This is something I think is really interesting, is noise and noise floor is very unique to each camera. And the bottom is very, very, digital looking to me, right? This is one of our older cameras. I'm not going to say which one. But it looks more like a fixed pattern noise. So the clumpiness, when you see it, you're like, it doesn't look, it looks pretty good. Could look better. So if you really look at the top of this, that is your randomized noise floor. That's what the Raptor is getting. And like Al said, that looks more like texture, which looks more like grain, which I think is visually pleasing. It's a better noise floor itself. So the Raptor is very good at the noise floor and how we're working with the sensor, how the thermals are working with it, and it gives you a very, very clean image. But if you lift it, the noise looks very much like grain, and hopefully everyone likes grain here because I love it.
Yeah, and then with the low light performance of the Raptor sensor, obviously you can then, you can lift the ISO to 1600, 3200, worry less about your shadows, kind of get some of this grain into your image, protect your highlights, which is quite a popular workflow with the V-RAPTOR sensor. And moving forward, the V-RAPTOR X sensor. So as Dan mentioned, part of the way we're able to get these noise characteristics is because the V-RAPTORs, so V-RAPTOR and V-RAPTOR X, all now have thermoelectric coolers built into the sensor. So we are heating the sensor, so maintains a constant temperature across the full sensor. This also speeds up the whole calibration process, so black shade calibrations now just take 30 seconds, and they are applied for the full operating temperature range of the camera. So in the past, you might have had to recalibrate when moving from interior to exterior. On the V-RAPTOR, that's no longer needed. So unless you're changing between plus or minus 40 degrees Celsius, you won't need to recalibrate the sensor.
And the fan noise is way quieter. I don't know how many people have complained in the past with our fan noise, but yeah, we haven't heard any complaints on the Raptor and the Komodo ecosystem. It is a much, much quieter fan setup that we have in the cameras.
Yeah, so the fan is larger than it was on DSMC2, so spins at a lower pitch, much more pleasing in terms of the human ear. And then even on top of that, there is a quiet record fan mode in camera as well. Okay, again, this is another kind of list of specifications that we've kind of gotten used to at this point, but 8K 120 is pretty ridiculous, and now being able to do that with a global shutter in addition is really kind of pushing the limits of what this technology can achieve. So as with all RED sensors, if you lower the vertical resolution, your frame rates can go up. So it maxes out 8K 120 or 150 in a 2:4:1 aspect ratio, all the way down to 600 frames per second in 2K. And then as a little party trick, it also offers 1,000 frames per second in an 8:1 aspect ratio. So again, if you're faced with the decision of hiring maybe a phantom in, an additional operator, additional crew, or being able to do it all within your primary camera while still maintaining that cinematic look, it's a very, very nice portfolio of frame rates there.
Yeah, like Al said, it's important to know the frame rate of each camera because then you can determine what type of shoot you can use our cameras with. And knowing that 4K 240 is actually pretty cool to see, which is this clip right here. And we see a lot of people just use our cameras for commercial work because you have a body that can do a lot of different frame rate options.
Okay, so we mentioned that all the sensors now have phase detection autofocus built in. So that's now dedicated pixels on the sensor, using that to create the autofocus, and then we can continue to build on that through software improvements. One of those software improvements is that we now have face tracking available in camera. So we have a nice little demo of that here. Obviously, this will require an electronic lens, so RF or EF to function. So yeah, now that we have the hardware built into the sensor, we can continue to improve on this. Obviously, autofocus in a cinema camera is pretty exciting, and I'm sure it'll keep getting better and better. And then finally, not something we always focus on as a kind of imaging company, but again, for those kind of run and gun camera operators, solo shooters, the improvements in audio architecture are going to be very important on V-RAPTOR X. So the preamps have been given a significant boost over the previous generation Raptor. So there's new hardware in the camera, which gives you in general a lot cleaner audio experience. Okay, so along with all those kind of hardware improvements internally, as well as alongside the global shutter sensor, that's allowed us to introduce a couple of kind of headline features, that being extended highlight protection and phantom track dual capture. So I know, Dan, you've been hard at work on this for probably the last, I don't know, how do you want to put a time span on it?
Yeah, no, this is something we've been working on some time. It's actually a really, really cool feature. It's called phantom track, right? So this is when the camera is recording 2 tracks at the same time. So we have 2 separate R3Ds, raw files, and its perfect use case is partnering with someone like a Megapixel or a Brompton, where they have their ghost frame or frame remapping with those 2 different tools out there, or 2 different processors. And as you can see in this image, right, the LED volume is getting 2 slices of 2 images, one green screen, one of the Unreal Engine world I think they're playing. You're getting 2 images at the same time. So when you're there, you see which one you want, but you have an R3D file that has, or a raw file, that has 2 different slices, so 2 different tracks. So you have your standard track that has the world that the actor's in and that you're going to probably use, and then you have a redundant green screen or camera track or whatever else you want as your second track. And I've seen many use cases for this recently. One really cool one was a sporting event where the talent wanted to read, instead of off the teleprompter, off the LED volume, where the second track wasn't a green screen, but it was like a teleprompter, and they were able to read all the material they wanted off of it and not stress about anything, because that's what they're viewing, where the camera was capturing the other track. So because we're recording these 2 different files at the same time as unique raw files, and at different, with the second track having a different sensor phase offset, that we can record that separate slice that you're getting from the processor, it opens up a lot of unique options, and as well as safety. 2 really important things is you want to be, make sure your images and your content is as secure as possible, and then you also want to, open up creative ideas for the creative cinematographer team or whoever's creating the content.
Yeah, so for context, the previous method of doing this would have been shooting double the frame rates and then extracting the second track in post-production. It's another nice example of RED having a look at how people are using the product in the field, and implementing a feature to make that whole process a lot more efficient. So it's a nice example of being able to monitor both of these tracks on set, so be able to pull the green screen out of one SDI, the Unreal environment out of the other SDI, depending on who's viewing it. And then again, this has implementations in terms of broadcast as well, as Dan mentioned. So yeah, quite a nice feature. Very simple to enable in camera. It's just a click of a button. OK, and then perhaps more appropriate for kind of the wider industry as a whole, extended highlights. So I could probably, again, let you.
Yeah. So extended highlights is another new feature of Global Vision. So with extended highlights, we're doing something similar to what we're doing with Phantom Track, where we are capturing multiple frames at the same time. But instead of Phantom Track being those two unique raw files it's saving to your storage or wherever you're saving to, what we're doing with extended highlights is we're actually going to be blending the highlight track into the original track, and it's going to be expanding those highlights by three or more stops, depending what you're capturing itself. So it's a way to give you more options when capturing. Would I recommend turning on all the time and always having it? No, because it is recording 2 frames at the same time. That's going to be doubling your data. But there's use cases for it. Say you're shooting high up in a building and the window is blown out and you can't match the lighting inside. You can turn on extended highlights. Say you're shooting next to a fire, say you're shooting a sunset. There's a lot of use cases where you want a little bit more on the highlight. So this is where you're able to extend the highlights to capture your entire image without clipping. So it's a very cool feature. I definitely recommend coming by and taking a look how it works in our booth over here. But yeah, it's a great tool for situations where you need it. 95% of the time, we have more than enough dynamic range to capture whatever your content is. But if you need it, we do have this feature, which is it's good to know it exists, and it's good to have in your back pocket.
Yeah, we should say a lot of the DOPs have tested it already. They got the camera, turned it on, and said, "Well, I don't see a difference," and that's good. That means the sensor's native dynamic range is already enough. So expose your scene like you always would. And then if you just need to bring in something that's clipping in the background, maybe that's when you would turn on extended highlights.
Yeah.
We have a nice example of it working here. I think you said there is an ISO pull in this as well, right? So using that extended highlights to bring the sky back, so getting that information back into the shot.
Yeah, the perfect use case, right? Instead of iris pull, we're like, oh, let's turn on extended highlights, see what we're capturing, right? Because we wanted to expose for the inside. When you expose for the inside, outside was too bright. So we just enable extended highlights, and it's going to be, on the right-hand side, you're getting all that detail back. So yeah, perfect use case of when you'd want to use it. Usually you would want to, obviously expose for whatever your content is, but, this is a situation where you wouldn't be able to do both.
And then again, as it is in camera, it's just an on-off switch in camera. If it was recorded in camera, you also have the same ability to turn it on and off in post-production.
So like Al said, it is a one-click button. So as simple as possible. You don't have to do any sliding. You don't have to do any unique, controls. It's just one click, turn on and off. So this shot in my backyard, went to shoot some sunset on here, and I'm like, oh, perfect shot. When I was viewing it on my normal exposure, right, I noticed that the sun was being blown out ever so slightly, right? I saw the highlights were blown out, so I'm going to enable extended highlights. Brings it back, you get that detail. So perfect use case. I was exposing, I wanted the city. Didn't want to underexpose and then make this noisy city to protect for the highlights in the sun. I want to be this exposure. So in camera, I turn on extended highlights, right? On and off, so you can see one more time. Let me zoom in a little. And it just brought back that information. So perfect use case, loved it, super easy to use, and it's just on and off. So if you don't want it or you notice anything going on that you don't like, you can just turn it off. So right now it's just in Red City X. It's eventually going to be in NLEs like Resolve, Premiere. I think it's already in Final Cut Pro X, but it's starting to showing up inside the NLEs you use. But best use case if you want to play with it is inside Red City X. Yeah,
so as other NLEs implement our SDK, you'll start to see that on and off function in things like Resolve, Premiere, as on top, in addition to Red Cine. So at the moment, to use extended highlights, you will need to use Red Cine X. all other files from the V-RAPTOR X will open in NLEs as normal.
And I've been getting the question, why not have it on all the time? And like I said, it's doubling your data, right? And because of that, we're also losing frame rates. So 8K 120 is what we capture. If you turn on extended highlight, it's going to go down to 8K 60. So you're losing frame rates, and it's doubling your data. So it's just a unique tool to turn on when you want. And the best way is just expose normally. 95, 99% of the time, the camera has more than enough dynamic range for what you're shooting. But in those unique cases, just turn it on and you get a little bit more highlight retention. It's super easy to use, and I think it's really cool for a lot of setups.
Yeah, and again, the blend is being done on the GPU. So as now we've moved the D-Bear onto the GPU, playback of the R3D file is now possible. But obviously, with using extended highlights, you will see a little slowdown in performance as well. Yeah. All right, and then just to finally round this off, kind of we'll look at some of the other kind of unique versatility options, the adaptability of this product. So again, what the camera can offer you beyond the image capture process.
So yeah, one thing I always love talking about every single time is we get a lot of questions, why 8K, right? Most deliverables are going to be 4K or 2K for cinema. So why 8K? So yes, capture 8K in the camera. One of my biggest recommendations, tips I can give when using our camera and most cameras out there is use the entire sensor. I don't care if it's 6K, 8K, 4K, whatever it is. Try to use the entire sensor. That's always going to give you the best looking image. And in our case, hey, it's 8K, but your deliverable is going to be 4K. So we get a lot of producers, production saying, oh, I only want to shoot 4K, I'm delivering 4K. Wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend shooting 8K, and then you get downsampling. So this is an image where the top left is 2K upscaled to 4K, the middle left is 4K delivered at 4K, and the bottom left is 8K downsampled to 4K. And whenever you downscale or downsample an image, it's going to look more organic. There's going to be less jagged edges. It's going to clean up the noise floor. It's just going to look overall better every time. And it's a test you guys can do. Set a camera to 8K, set a camera to 4K, downsample to 4K, and you'll see that it's always going to be looking better. And an analogy I use is, hey, you're shooting a circle, right? You use 1,000 pixels to make a circle versus 10 pixels to make a circle, right? The 1,000 pixels, that circle will look smoother. It'll look much more organic. It'll look better. Versus that circle that you only have 10 pixels to make, it's going to look like, you know, Super Nintendo from 1994, right? It's just not going to have that much information. So my recommendation, when you can, always take advantage of the full sensor, because that's always going to give you the best image possible.
Yeah, so obviously we've been making 8K sensors for a while now, but it's still a question we get is, why would I need to shoot 8K if I'm not finishing in 8K? That is not the primary reason for shooting using an 8K sensor. Obviously, there are a lot of benefits beyond an 8K deliverable, so such as downsampling, reframing in post, pan and scan. Yeah. There is a lot of flexibility. Yeah, it comes back to that versatility we talked about. So using the 8K canvas to give you the best possible flexibility throughout the whole production. And then obviously the follow-up question to once we've said you should shoot 8K is, all right, but surely that's going to be loads of data, especially because RED obviously uses a RAW codec. So again, just to put emphasis on this, it is a compressed RAW codec. We have a few different compression options in camera. The first two being HQ and MQ. So as a kind of comparable data rate to a Quad 4 ProRes XQ file, you will get a little bit more out of the ProRes, but again, that is a 4K file. It's not 16-bit. You don't have all the raw parameters that come with the R3D. And again, in addition to that, we have an LQ, so a higher level of compression that will give you longer recording times than that Quad 4 XQ ProRes. Again, the difference between 8K and 4K, 8K is not double 4K. There is an exponential increase across the resolution chart there. Again, fine, you might say, all right, well, I don't want to shoot a Quad 4 XQ ProRes anyway. Quad 4 is fine for me. But then we also, again, offer another level of compression that surpasses that in terms of maximizing that record time. As you've probably guessed, HQ, MQ, LQ, high quality, medium quality, low quality. Another thing we get is
light quality.
Yeah, or light quality, sure. Extended light quality. Another question we get then is, obviously, I've just spent 25 grand on a camera. I don't immediately want to put it in low quality mode. So a better way to think of it is high complexity, medium complexity, low complexity. So think about what you're shooting. If you're shooting a massive blockbuster Hollywood film that's going to have a ton of VFX, then yeah, maybe you want to stick it in high quality. If you know you're going to be pulling stills from the image, you're going to be putting those stills on billboards all around Paris, maybe you want to be shooting high quality. But for most use cases, MQ, perfectly fine. Again, if you're delivering to web, LQ, ELQ, perfectly acceptable. So the best thing I would recommend is test these compressions. So again, versatile, depending on the shoot, can influence the amount of compression you're applying to the image.
Yeah, no, it's a good example, and the data rates aren't that big shooting in our file format, and like Al said, a 4K file compared to 8K raw file, right? That's a big difference in information you're getting between the two codecs, and like Al said, test it yourself. Most shots you shoot, you're going to be at a 1.8, up to 5.6, and most images is going to be out of focus anyway. Do you really need to shoot HQ for that? Maybe not. Maybe those shots you don't need to. So a lot of the stuff I shoot on a lot of our demos and reels and stuff is going to be ELQ and LQ because I want the resolution, I want the benefits of high res, but I want the file small. I don't want to fill up my storage, and I want to be able to capture as much content without worrying about the amount of hard drive space I have, and being able to record 328 minutes of 8K on one of our mags. That's a lot of data that you can capture without having to stress about where am I going to deal with it. So it's really good to know that our files are 8K high resolution and raw, but the files are not big.
Yeah, so obviously compression sometimes seen as a dirty word, but it's perfectly normal with all codecs. They are compressed. So a better way to look at it, rather than lowering your resolution and maintaining less compression. So as Dan said earlier, shoot using the full sensor where possible. Obviously, there will be instances, like for frame rates, as we talked about earlier, where you might need to lower the resolution. But where possible, shoot using the full sensor. And if data rates are a concern, just increase the compression. So this is a nice comparison here using a lens chart. So 8K LQ versus 4K HQ. So I think both downsampled to 4K in post, right? So this is very comparable in terms of data rates. So this won't really change the record time you have available. Obviously, shooting in 8K with higher compression will give you a better image than minimizing compression but lowering your resolution to compensate. So hopefully quite a simple example there to kind of get that point across.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing to understand. The more information you give a codec, the more efficient it is. As simple as that. So this is why, hey, the same data rate, you're going to fill up the mag the same time. Might as well capture the more efficient, high-resolution file as opposed to the lower resolution when you can. So simple as that.
And another feature that now all our cameras can take advantage of, the V-RAPTOR XL was the first RED camera that had internal ND. This is now also available for Komodo, Komodo-X, and V-RAPTOR X using an RF to PL adapter with ND cartridges. This is an electronic ND system, so it allows you to be incredibly granular. So you have 2 to 7 stops, or 0.6 to 2.1. But within that range, you have down to quarter stop control. So this allows you to use the ND as an exposure tool. So rather than leaning on your iris or your shutter speed, which will affect motion cadence or depth of field, you can just lean on the ND. As with all RED features, this can be controlled entirely remotely. You have options on the body, but again, it can be all controlled over IP with it being electronic. Okay, so as I said, like with the ND, all features in the RED camera can be controlled over IP. So the camera will generate its own HTML-based web page that you can just access through the IP address of the camera. Just punch that into a browser. If the camera is connected to the same network, you'll have full camera control. However, we also have the French-created, so hopefully that wins us some points, RED Control app and the RED Control Pro app. So RED Control is free on Android and iOS. It's a brilliant camera companion app, so it does give you a wireless preview as well as full camera control. It's very flexible in terms of the way you like to set it up. And then we also have the RED Control Pro app, which is a paid perpetual license for Mac or iPads that gives you multi-camera control. So again, that'll be bandwidth dependent, but I think you guys tested it up to 50 cameras, ran out of cameras before you found a limit?
Yeah, you can go up really high on RED Control. So the array is a very, very useful tool to be able to control an array with one app, be able to remote start stop all at the same time, make sure they're all at the exact same parameters. Very, very easy when you can link them all together. And like Al said, you can control it. There's some really cool things you can do with it. I even use RED Control. I enable zoom, so I can have producers or location be able to view what I'm seeing anywhere, which is really cool because your iPhone has internet connectivity, and you can just share your iPhone screen or iPad screen. So you're able to have anyone view this anywhere, and as well as controlling it. You can port forward. I can control the camera in my office right now if I remote log in. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, and it helps you determine what you want, right? If you're on location and you want to be able to control the camera outside the car, you can do that. I'm across the world, I can do that as well. So it just opens up options. The biggest thing is with these, different IP controls or with these different tools, it gives you a lot of things that I might not be able to think of that someone else can. So it gives you that flexibility to come up with different workflows or different use cases that might not have been open in the past before. And these are two really, really cool tools to show it off with.
And then another example of how workflows, are continuously evolving in terms of being ahead of the curve. We have camera to cloud available in camera. So we have the ability to either upload the raw recording directly to the cloud, or perhaps the proxy ProRes file directly to cloud. So as soon as you stop recording, that footage will upload and be available either via a Frame.io or S3 bucket. So giving post-production access to the footage as it's being shot.
So yeah, this is the last slide we're going to show right now because we are over. But like Al said, going camera to cloud is really cool. I can upload to S3 bucket, Frame.io, whatever I need to. So you have that flexibility to just start showing your files right away. So instead of dailies, you're now secondlies, or however fast your internet connection is. So great.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you very much.